Have you ever been working on your family tree when you come across an error in the records? How about this one? My great uncle. Just look at how many different ways his name is spelled. Demick, Damick, Dimmick, and the most egregious, Duke. I mean, seriously, let me introduce you to my great uncle, Duke Mills. There's something seriously wrong with these source documents, and so today we're going to get to the bottom of it. I'll show you how to evaluate and correct these sources. You can do it. I'll show you how. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you've been working on your family tree for any length of time, you'll know that source documents are the backbone of every reliable family tree. They help us to separate fact from family fiction and build our tree so that it is reliable and trustworthy. But we do find errors from time to time, and it's important to know how to figure out where the error occurred and how to fix it for our family and for subsequent genealogists who will consult these same records. The good news is that FamilySearch and other online genealogy applications have built-in ways to improve source accuracy while maintaining transparency about what has been changed. Okay, so let's look at my most misrepresented relative, Demick Ansley Mills. One quick glance, and we can see that the record keepers and the transcribers have really had a tough time with his name. So let's run through the places where you can make changes in FamilySearch. So first, we're going to look here under the Details tab, and this first section has vital information, name, birth, death, and so on. And you'll see beside each record, it says how many sources there are, and who the last person was to change it. And then there's a pencil beside it. And if we click the pencil beside the name, we get this pop-out window. And there's a lot of information here. Normally, it's not as complex as this. But this one is particularly complicated because we have so many variations in the name. Demick, Duuk, Demock, down here, Dimok, Damox. I mean, it's really quite remarkable. And so in this particular record, we have two things that are a little bit unusual that you don't often see. First of all, Barry Mayo has had this note here. The name of Demick Ainsley does not match the name Dimac A. So he's looking at one of these records and he's left this note to say this name is not the same as the profile name. He's also left this information up at the top. It says, please review the tagged sources before editing this information. And of course, that's important when you've got so much confusing information about the name here. This is a fairly new thing in FamilySearch, and it allows you to leave a message for other people who are working on this profile so that they are a little forewarned about some specific detail, in this case, the many variations in the name. We're not going to do anything right now, so we're just going to close this window. In all of these profile vital records, ideally, they will be based on an attached source. Most of the time, you will simply insert the information that you find in a source. So for example, the death information here, we click on it. There's a death record, and in that record, it has this information, and that has been added as the detail for the death of Ainsley Mills. That's the limit of this vital section here. You're basically taking information from the sources and then adding it to these fields using the edit pencil. Now, before we get into correcting sources, there's one more field under the Vitals tab that you should know about. Actually, it's under Other Information. It's something called also known as, or alternate names. Now let's consider a woman who's named Elizabeth. She might be called Elizabeth, or she could be called Liz, or Beth, or Lizzie. You don't want to make a correction. That's technically not something to be corrected. Instead, you want to go down here to Other Information and add an alternative name. And so you can see from the drop-down menu, there's lots of different things. So also known as, or AKA, married name or nickname. So in the case of Liz or Lizzie or Beth, you would say that would either be also known as or a nickname. For women who take on their husband's last name after they're married, their profile should always be with their maiden name or their birth name. This is the standard in FamilySearch. But you should also then go down to this Other Information and add an alternate name. In this case, you would say the married name, and then in the future, people will know that that was this woman's married name. But what if there is a mistake in one or more of the sources? This is what we really want to dig in today. So we'll start by selecting the Sources tab, and then we're going to look at Dimmick Ainsley's his profile. And as we've already noted, it's a bit of a train wreck with all the different spellings of his name. It's very clear that somewhere along the way, mistakes have been made. But before we jump in and start correcting things, we need to make sure that we have a clear idea about what the correct spelling is. This isn't always easy to do because there may be missing records for the person. And in this case, we do not have a birth certificate for Ainsley. So this is the earliest record with Dimmick Mills's name, and it's from the Canadian census from 1871. So we just click on this header, and it opens up the details for the record, and we scroll down here to view the original document. And once this opens up in our browser, we're going to want to zoom in. So all of the extracted information is here in the right column, and we have the original record here. We're going to zoom right in, and we have Mills, David and Alice, and then down here we have Dimmock, D-I-M-O-C-K. Now the letter I doesn't seem to have a dot over it, so technically it could be an E, but other records in the family from that time period spelled Dimmock with an I. The consensus clearly uses a K for the last letter, very clear there, not an H, and there's only one M. So in a situation like this, when you're uncertain of a particular letter in the name, the best thing is to look around at other names with, maybe a name that you know, like there's David and William. The I's are pretty clearly marked. So I would say that it could be an E, but it's more likely to be an I in this case. This is detective work. Narrowing down the spelling of a name can often require looking around, maybe even going to another page in the records to find other names and to explore the handwriting of this particular author. Benjamin there, the I's are pretty clear. Amelia, see the E is actually quite small. But aside from that one letter, the rest is pretty clear. So that's our starting point. Now there are primarily two kinds of errors that we frequently come across when handling historical documents. First is an original document error, where the information has been recorded incorrectly. And secondly is a transcription error, where the person digitizing or indexing the record has transcribed the information incorrectly. But always remember, historical records are what they are. We can't go back and change the record itself, even if you know that it's incorrect. But what you can do is change the indexed information so that it's more readily searchable for others doing research in this family. So let's look at an example. We're going to close the census and we're going to go to the Massachusetts State Vital Records. And this is the most interesting one, Duuk. And if we scroll down, we can see the original here is on the right. And this is the information that has been indexed from the record. Now over here on the right-hand side, there's an edit pencil. And unfortunately in this case, it says edit is unavailable. Sorry, this record cannot be edited. So that's a little bit disappointing. And if we go up to the top here and we go to the link to the record view, it has the same information, the same original document, the same indexed information. And again, there's an edit pencil, but edit is unavailable. So that's a little frustrating, but let's go and look at the original and see if we can find out where Duke comes from. So we'll just zoom right in here. So right away we can see that the microfilm image is not very clear. It is low resolution and high contrast. The D is clear, and the O is clearly an O, but C looks like an O, and the last letter looks like an H. And in fairness to the census taker, I don't know about you, but when I write my cursive M's, I can have 2 or 3 or 4 bumps, especially if it's a double M or an MN combination. But look here, we're in the original document, and over here is a pencil. And so we can edit the name here in the original name. I'm sure the reason for this is that FamilySearch doesn't want anybody changing a document without looking at the original. Fair enough. So let's make a change here. So we're going to look at the given name, and we're going to change that to Dimmock A, last name Mills. Now, because we've changed this, they want to see where it is in the record, because maybe somebody's going to double check and just make sure that our correction is a good one. So we click this Add Highlight, and now we go over here and we draw a square over the name. I'm going to stretch that out a little bit, and then we click Attach. And so we see that the name is now highlighted. So anybody who's going to go back and say, wait a minute, a correction has been made, I better just check and make sure it's a good one, they'll be able to know where the name is located. So they'll be able to see the Dimmock A. And now we click Save. And it's changed. There we go. We have made a correction to the document. Now, in a perfect world, this correction should eventually change all of the records that are linked to it. So let's go back to our sources, and we'll have a look and see if anything has changed. Oh, look at that. It says Dimmock A. Mills. All right, that's promising. Let's go even further back and look at Dimmock's profile. And no, it still says Duke. But you know what? I'm going to refresh the page, and let's see if that changes anything. No, it does not change it. However, even though this edit down here for the indexed information has not changed, well, it has changed down here. It's changed right here. But it hasn't changed in the title. But look over here. There's an edit button. Let's click on that. Yes. Okay, so we can't change the source or the citation, but we can change the title. And we're just going to go down here, and there's notes and reason to change source. So we're going to say the first name, Dimmock, was transcribed incorrectly. The spelling is based on the 1871 Canada census. And save. And there we are, Dimmock A. Mills. And here in the indexed information it's also been corrected. So that's how you correct a transcription error. Now let's take a look at an error in the original document. We're going to go down to the 1896 Massachusetts Vital Records. Now there are 3 records for this marriage. It's the marriage of Dimmock's daughter, Elsie Mills, to Frank Pendlebury. Now one of these is the local town clerk record, the original recording, and then these other 2 are duplicates of the state Department of Health vital records, including birth, marriages, and death records. So the state record books were copied from the local town book. Anyway, we can compare these 2 records. We can see that there was a change even between them when they were copied. One says D-E-I-M-M, and the other is D-E-A-M-M. Sadly, Dimmock Mills died 19 years before the marriage of his daughter. In fact, she was just an infant when he passed away. So whoever gave the information to the minister or the clerk must have said it incorrectly, or it was written down incorrectly. We don't know for sure. But what we do know is that this is our Dimmock because all of the other details are the same. So Dimmock and Emma Hawks and the daughter, Elsie O. Mills. So again, the edit button is grayed out, and if we go to the document record, we can see that this is also grayed out. So we're going to have to go to the original once again. And so here we have the original record book, and we can zoom in again. We've got, it's actually Frank Pendlebury and Elsie O'Mills. So we're beginning to see already that there's the penmanship of the the scribe was a little bit difficult here. But there we go. So we've got C. Dimmick and Emma Hawkes. So we know that Dimmick's wife was indeed Emma Hawkes, Hawkes. I don't think it's correct. Yeah, so it's recorded here, transcribed Haek. So that's a W, not an E. But anyway, we should correct that as well, but we're not going to do that right now. We're looking at Dimmick. So clearly we've got E and I, we've got double M, looks like OCK. And if we look here, it's DEIMMOCK. So this is actually transcribed accurately based on what's recorded in the record. But that's not how you spell his name. Okay, so we're ready to make the change. And so we go over into this right column, go down to the birth name and the given name. We're going to change that to DIMOCK. Now we know that from other records, it's Dimmick Ainsley, but we're not going to add Ainsley because it's not in this document. In fact, this document has a C instead of an A, and that's curious. Not sure why that is, but we never want to be correcting a document in such a way that we're adding information that's not in the original. So in this case, we believe Dimmick is misspelled and it needs to be corrected. But we're not going to add the C because we don't think that that belongs. Neither will we add the A because this document doesn't include it. I hope that makes sense. Once we've made that correction, we click the Add the Highlight button, and then we come over here and put the highlight over the name so people can look it up afterwards and say, do we agree with this change? Somebody in the future may want to challenge that. So now we're just going to update and save. And now it is corrected. Now when we go back to the document source page here, we can see that Dimmick Mills has been changed, and it's also been changed down here in the indexed information. So that's good. That's what we were looking for. And now if we go back to our source page in the profile, we can see that the name has changed down here in the indexed information, and again here. However, it has not changed in the title. So we can just click the edit button, and we're going to delete that and put Dimmick. And again, we're not going to add the A because it's not in the original source. And we're going to say first name spelled incorrectly in original. And save. And there we go. Dimmick Mills. And the indexed information is also corrected to say Dimmick Mills. So that's how you correct an error in the original document. When you embark upon correcting records in this way, you're paving the way for future researchers to have an easier job. But I would encourage you to make everything consistent. In other words, once you've corrected 1 or 2 records, you should continue until you've completed them all. Your correction will usually appear in the details page right away. And you should also know that FamilySearch keeps both the original incorrect name as well as your corrected name in their searchable index. This allows other researchers to find the record even if they're using an incorrect spelling. Now, just before wrapping up, let me share some best practices for making corrections responsibly. Be conservative. When in doubt, don't change it. It's better to add a note explaining a potential issue than to introduce new errors. Be collaborative. Remember that FamilySearch is a collaborative environment. Other researchers might have good reasons for recording the information that seems wrong to you. Check the change history and any attached notes before making modifications. Also remember that not all records can be corrected. Some collections are from partner organizations, and their data arrangements or copyright would prevent changing. Be accurate. Enter information as you see it in the original image. If you see an initial, don't spell the whole name out. Don't use the correction features to add nicknames or other variations that don't belong in this part of the vital records. Instead, put them under other information, Be transparent. Always explain your reasoning. A correction without an explanation isn't very helpful to future researchers and may be reversed by a moderator. Be patient. Index corrections can take time to be reviewed and approved, so don't resubmit the correction multiple times. And be respectful. Remember that previous contributors, indexers, and researchers, even the original record creators, were doing their best with the information and tools available to them. It's best to minimize complaining and criticism. Correcting source documents in FamilySearch is really about finding the right balance between preserving historical integrity and improving research accuracy. The goal isn't to make records say what we want them to say. Rather, it's to make sure that they accurately reflect what they actually do say, and in rare cases, to make corrections only after evaluating the evidence from multiple sources. Start small, be thoughtful, and always remember that your corrections should help future researchers. Don't focus on simply fixing immediate problems in your own family tree. Every improvement you make helps build a better resource for the entire genealogy community. So what about you? What questions do you have about making source corrections? Have you encountered tricky situations where you weren't sure whether to suggest a change? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing from your experiences and learning from the challenges that you faced. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.